Advice would you give someone who's trying to break into the art world?
Don't quit. We need you. Please. The art world will never stop needing young, exciting people. And don't let the first no or the first failure or the first rejection, don't let that set you back. I think that traditional galleries often forget a key audience that they need to be speaking to, which are young people, which are people that are showing up to the openings for the love of the game, who are really invested in the discourse around art. Most exciting practitioners that I know are people that never went to school, that picked up art as a hobby and have developed it into a career, but also aren't concerned by how things should be done. They do things the way that they need to do it, and by and large, the end product is so much better for it.
Well, welcome to the Inside the Art World podcast.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
having you. I was going to hit off with the questions here, but I want our audience to know more about, minor attractions and, what's that about and, and how you built that.
Yeah, so Minor Attractions started in 2023, it was kind of co-founded between myself and Johnny Tanner from Harleston High Street. And it began as this really scrappy endeavor where we thought that there was an opportunity to do something in London, and to pull together our community in a really effective way. And so we just started calling people, and we ended up kind of that year doing it in two spaces, one in Borough Yards, which is just behind Borough Market, and one on Manette Street in Soho. And it was just kind of trial by fire, right? Like sending out invitations and praying people came. And I remember this moment of relief when we opened the doors at Borough Yards, and it was just like, I couldn't believe that it had actually happened. And from there, I think we moved into the Mandrake the next year, which is really kind of where we've taken on our current form, and used the last really 24 months to keep building out our programming and refining our vision. And I think now, we're very proud to run the art fair that we have in October, but also really thinking about what we're able to do programmatically, how we're able to bring in new communities that are maybe adjacent to art, and other elements, and make sure that, I think we are speaking to the biggest possible group that's interested in what we're doing and creative culture in London.
Yeah, no, I think it's amazing. And I look forward to us, we're going to be doing some amazing things as well.
Absolutely.
What makes you, different from other art fairs?
I think that, well, there's a couple of things that I would pinpoint as being key differentiators. One is that we're gallery run. So, everyone involved either at this juncture, either previously has worked for a gallery, or currently works for a gallery. And so we are really up to date with what that world looks like because we're living it every day. But of course, we're not the only gallery run thing in the world. What I would also say is kind of a really key differentiator for us is our programming. And so, I think from day one, we were really interested in bringing in these adjacent communities to art, to kind of to fine art or visual art, and giving them pride of place in terms of what we were doing. And that really has developed through some incredibly talented people that we work with, and are now, kind of part of our core setup. And of course, our director, Sophie Barrett-Pulo, deserves a huge shout out for her work in this regard. That's become our real calling card. And that's really come to be in large part how we define ourselves. And so, now we're of course launching Summer Sessions, our festival in May. And that's kind of a real outgrowth of that. So that's what I would say is kind of the key difference. But of course there are little things that permeate throughout, right? We're a small team that is very present, that is, I think, very proud to have our hand in everything that happens. And so, if a gallery has a problem or wants things to be a certain way, there isn't any bureaucracy. There's just our phone number and email, and we tend to those things kind of day and night. So I think that's kind of the approach we take, and everyone's family, we're all in this together.
You said the biggest misconception about the art world is that it's glamorous. What's the reality of this all?
I think a lot of it is incredibly boring and very taxing. And I think, I often joke with my colleagues that like our entire lives are spreadsheets and emails, and, we're glorified kind of email monkeys. But I think ultimately, there's a lot of work that goes into it. And I think for every night that we get to swan around and drink free wine or beer at an opening, there's 10, 50, 100 nights that are spent working, trying to just get the doors open. And what, we hope feels really simple to an outsider, to the public, is usually very difficult.
Yeah, it's super admin every single day, emails, spreadsheets. I'm doing a bunch of presentations right now, and it's just like we probably do about maybe 4 events a year,
Yeah.
but it's just constant calls, emails.
All the time. And I think the biggest thing too is that like everyone forgets the very real production side of things, that for a painting to get up on the wall in the simplest sense, someone has to put it there. It has to be, secured, etc. For anything more complicated, all of that's built. And people are, running around, getting these things done. There's a huge amount of physical labor for everyone that goes into it, from the presentation to the shipping to the packaging. It takes an army. So
Yeah. Why do you think people still romanticize the art world?
I think that a lot of people involved in the art world like to present it that way. I think that, maybe it's a little bit of a holdover from maybe 20 years ago when the art world was a little bit different. But I also think that now, one of the great blessings of the world that we live in is that we have the opportunity to be transparent about the things that we're doing. Not everything needs to be hidden. And I think, I hope that narrative changes a little bit, because I think at the very least, I hope it opens doors to people who see this quote unquote, exclusivity and feel that that's not for them, that they recognize that if they have applicable skills, this can be something that they do too.
Similar to you, I feel like I've got into this art space by accident. I originally started off in music, then I went to a few galleries and fell in love with the whole entire thing. How did you fall into this by accident?
Oh, goodness. I'm nothing if not driven by spite. And I was dating a girl in college who studied art history. And at the time, I was studying film. And kind of one thing led to another, and we broke up. And I was like, well, maybe I should try this art stuff. And, lo and behold, you kind of make a couple friends. You put on a couple shows. And then, I think in my case, I found that it was not only work that I enjoyed, but I felt that I was good at. And I've just put one foot in front of the other for the last 7 years.
And like, what were the steps into building what you've built now? Were there exhibitions beforehand, before this brand? Or like, what did that whole entire process look like for you?
So much failure. And I really wish that someone, when I was starting, someone would have told me, like, you will fail more times than you can count. I've opened galleries and closed galleries. I have, traveled around the world for absolutely no gain. And, I think that the steps that I've taken have largely been missteps. And the best thing that I've done to date is to just keep going. Because what I would say is that, yes, there are exhibitions and there are going to be more bad exhibitions. And certainly in my case, there have been more bad exhibitions than there have been good exhibitions. But if you just keep doing them, it's eventually you get them right.
Yeah.
And you start to get more right than you get wrong.
How was the experience with working in a gallery versus doing the independent, your stuff that you're doing now?
I think in a gallery setting, and still running a gallery and having a very an incredibly competent co-director in Michael Sangster, I think previously was afforded the opportunity alone to think that all of my thoughts were good, and now have someone who very kindly reminds me otherwise. And I think particularly with regard to minor attractions, as that scales up, the humility that goes hand in hand with doing something like that is only amplified. And I guess ultimately what I mean by that is that as more opportunities become available, the more ideas or things you want to do, you have. And working in a team, I feel very grateful that those around me remind me that I have mostly bad ideas. So as I think we all do, right? But
Yeah.
I am often reminded that not every idea needs to be shared. So it's I think the biggest difference is that I'm kept in check maybe a little bit more.
You've mentioned inclusivity, humor, and urgency as a core theme. How does that show up in what you've built?
Inclusivity with regard to quality is never an option, right? we need to prioritize the best of what we can do at every juncture, but creating opportunities for those that are doing good work and may not have the opportunity to either be legible to a certain audience, or have the funds or the otherwise the opportunity to be a part of this infrastructure. I feel that it's our responsibility to create those inroads.